Not one, but two Big 12 schools were mentioned as legitimate possibilities for the Big Ten by one of college football's biggest newsbreakers and one of college football's biggest show hosts. And in particular, one of these is going to stir a lot of debate. They always do and have ever since they entered the conference. All right, so just when you think football season's here, we can put all the realignment stuff behind us, it never fails. I tried telling you guys this not that long ago on the show. This is the time of year something always happens. I mean, like last year we were doing the ACC song and dance with Florida State and Clemson, and there was the smoke about Big 12 meetings with those schools using it as kind of like a backup option. Like we could not escape it last year. Obviously, the summers before that, you had legitimate big-time realignment moves. It always happens. And now here we are. We're talking about Big 12 teams potentially going to the Big 10. Just when you thought you could rest your head easy at night that the Big 12 is going to have complete and total stability for eternity. I'm not saying that, a report and some speculation here from our friends at On3 is enough to totally jar that loose, but you may need to sleep with like half an eye open, put it that way. And it's all because of the new athletic director at Maryland. That's maybe the craziest part of all of this. The AD at Maryland, his name is Jim Smith. He took over very recently for a different AD at Maryland, and he went on a local radio show fan site and was asked how many teams. First of all, whoever asked this question, great question. This is a great way to elicit an interesting response from a new AD and fuel the news cycle. He did a great job with it. This is very good interviewing. The question was, how many teams will be in the Big Ten in 2030? How many teams will be in the Big Ten in 2030? And Jim Smith's answer was 20. If you're doing the math at home, kids, the Big Ten currently has 18 teams. So that means he thinks as of 2030, 2 more teams will be there. And you could argue, on one hand, this is actually an answer that's, one, not very surprising, or two, if it is surprising, it's surprising because it's 20 and not 24 or, this is the Big Ten, 28, 35. Tony Petitti may want a 60-team conference. Who the hell knows? He certainly seems to want a 60-team playoff. But the answer was at least that there would be more teams there. Okay. So Brett McMurphy wrote about this. He added a little bit of reporting about Notre Dame, being further entrenched now in independence than they were even before. So kind of like one of those, hey, don't even think about trying to throw Notre Dame into this equation. Lots of talk about Virginia and North Carolina, but the most interesting part of this came during Brett McMurphy's appearance with Andy and Ari on 3. Great show. You should go check it out. I think they do a very good job. But when Brett McMurphy popped in over there, they started getting more into the weeds of all right, who could these teams be? Brett McMurphy, I think, said in the article that based on his reporting, he did have an idea of who the top candidates would be for the Big Ten, but he was sworn to secrecy. So he wasn't going to divulge a ton, at least in the article, but he did divulge more when he actually hopped on with these guys and they started having a combo about it, okay? So look, the first one is the one I think is going to get people fired up here because, listen, this has been a team that ever since entering the conference has rubbed some people the wrong way. They have ruffled some feathers. Many people have felt like the attitude of said fan base was that they were too good for this place here. And so when you hear when you hear Brett McMurphy mention Utah being the sourced team that he had heard about, don't shoot the messenger, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, don't shoot the messenger.
From the Big 12, this gets kind of fascinating because I reached out to somebody that I trust a great deal, and they actually brought up a school in the Big 12. And to me, again,
can I guess? Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it Kansas?
It was actually Utah.
Oh, that's a good one.
So here's the 5 AAU teams from the Big 12: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. And when I mentioned Utah, again, I'm thinking Utah, what about geography? Obviously, geography doesn't matter. They go from coast to coast. And the response was, it's an untapped market, Salt Lake City, team on the uptick. Again, 5 years from now.
They're not really on the uptick. They've been good for They've been here for 20 years, over 20 years.
Yeah, obviously,
Andy, why don't you
Kyle Whittingham will no longer be there in 5 years. At least we think he won't. Who knows? He may surprise us. But again, who knows what they're going to look like in 5 years.
As I said, don't shoot the messenger. There it is, Utah. But, I mean, look, the case that Brett McMurphy lays out there, it does make sense. I mean, the Big Ten is clearly in a geography be damned sort of mode. So who cares? It's a new market for them. Utah is, I mean, I can tell you from experience, I learned very quickly how fast growing the area is, around Salt Lake. Like when I traveled to the area last year, Park City, specifically where I stayed for the K-State BYU game. And I put on Twitter, I was like, man, this is beautiful. I love the hiking here. Like, this is all awesome. I would love to move out here, like, halfway sarcastically, but halfway not kidding, actually. And I got a wave of you in my Twitter replies that were like, no, it's too crowded. Don't come out here. Too crowded, too crowded, too crowded. So everybody was like, don't do it. I know it's a really rapidly growing population base. It's a place that they are not. I've seen it mentioned in the chat already. Yes, Utah is an AAU member, which does matter. And that was a big piece of what Brett McMurphy talked about in this interview, is that the selection pool would be out of 13 teams from the ACC and Big 12 who are AAU members. That seems to still be something, at least according to Brett McMurphy's reporting, that would be important here. I think some have maybe doubted how important it is anymore, that any part of academics matter, but apparently it still does, according to Brett McMurphy's reporting. And if the Big Ten is in a position to be picky, they certainly would prefer that. So new population base, big population base, AAU, and obviously the football program has been very good. Now, the question will come, if we're talking about 2030, okay, well, what happens over the next 4 to 5 years for Utah? They need to pull themselves back up off the mat. Devin Dampier needs to deliver. I mean, this team needs to be better than it has been the past few years, but they can. I mean, Kyle Whittingham, I know there's speculation about him retiring. They've already named a successor, but he's only 65. Like, that's not, if he wanted to do this another 5 to 10 years, I would think he certainly would be able-bodied to do it. Utah does have a case that, I mean, you can understand why they would be on the fringes of this discussion. Now, college football season is here, guys, and that means we all need to find good deals on tickets, all right? And the best place to do that is SeatGeek. I have to give a huge shout out to SeatGeek, the sponsor of today's video. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are over 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek. So obviously, college football is covered, but if you're a music guy like me, it's perfect for concerts. I'm buying a ton of concert tickets this fall. And I tell you what, I have my eye on those Holy War tickets for BYU and Utah coming up as well. And man, all you got to do is open up the app. It's perfect. You can go check what's going on here, find the green dots in the seat. That means they're good deals. Red dots, maybe not so much, but SeatGeek will help you find the best deals on seats depending on where it is that you are trying to sit. They're each rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you guys know I'm here for you. I've got a code for you. Code Kurtz gets you $20 off your tickets. Again, that's code Kurtz for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. $20 off your first purchase with promo code Kurtz. Make sure you just click the link in the description to download the app and have that code on hand and ready to go. Guys, I'm here to help you out. I've got your back. Hit up my friends at SeatGeek. I would say if we're talking about Jim Smith saying, hey, there will be 20 teams in the Big Ten in 2030, 20 teams, and we're saying, would Utah be one of 2 that get added to the Big Ten? I don't know that that's the discussion we're having. This seems to me to be more of like a, hey, if they're going to like 24, the only case really for 20 would be, hey, maybe if UNC and Virginia really are 1-2, which McMurphy talked about, and the SEC gets them both, then you got to move further down your list. Like maybe that comes into play, maybe. But I would think this would be more of a 24 team sort of discussion. It all puts a lot of onus on this season for Utah to get the train back on the tracks. This does feel like a very large system. This is a very important season for BYU from Utah from a big picture standpoint. All right, let me lock that in. This is a very big season for Utah from a big picture standpoint to make sure that this is not a trend of mediocrity, And this is reestablishing, hey, we are a very good program that had quarterback injuries for a couple of years, and that is what drug us down. This now is like floating that carrot out there. Like apparently some still within Big Ten circles feel like Utah's got a shot there. They've got a shot. So you best be performing well in this conference that you think, I'm speaking for some of the fans here, but you think you are better than. You better go out and do it this year after a 5-7 season last year for sure. Now, I think they definitely have it in them, and they probably will be. But these are the types of things I talk about all the time. Like it feels like in this world, there is so much extra added pressure to schools in the Big 12 to perform because of these very big existential threats and things that are out there for you to potentially pursue. Now, the other school here, you heard Andy Staples mention it there, was Kansas. He guessed Kansas on which school Brett McMurphy had heard the most about. Now, Brett McMurphy, I guess we should make this distinction. The chatter about Kansas in this video was not Brett McMurphy saying, hey, this is sourced, other than Kansas was one of the 5 AAU schools in the Big 12 that Brett McMurphy mentioned, like, hey, it would come from one of the 5 AAUs in the Big 12 or 13 or 8 AAUs in the ACC, 13 total. That would be the pool that the Big Ten is picking from. So Kansas was in that. But Andy Staples kind of made the pitch for Kansas a little bit later on. So let's listen to
It's
that.
just got a massive donation. And it's not all coming at once, but it's a $300 million donation from one of its big donors. They have tons of money. They're paying Lance Leipold like a good SEC coach gets paid. Like, what if Kansas is good for the next 3 or 4 years at football, which, based on what we saw Saturday, they could be pretty good this year. So what happens? They're spending like a Big Ten or an SEC school right now.
I think ultimately, though, the university presidents are going to make a decision. And look, let's cut to the chase. How much money will adding Kansas compared to Miami bring to the Big Ten? That probably will be the deciding factor.
So you hear Brett McMurphy there. He was a little more, I mean, dismissive is not the correct word, but a little bit more like, hey, this is the reality. You would have to be getting yourself in possibly over a school like a Miami, and that money would ultimately rule the day there. But I mean, the case for Kansas, I think, has been pretty obvious for a while. Like, they've got a great basketball program. Basketball seems to matter a little bit more these days, just in the general scope of college athletics and conference realignment. We've seen with the SEC how they have built up basketball, how big of a deal that was this past year. Brett Yormark has had this vision of decoupling basketball and making it a bigger deal in terms of TV rights. So the basketball program matters. They are an AAU school, again, sort of table stakes, prereq, apparently, for the Big Ten. And now they're investing quite a bit in football, and they just got a $300 million gift from David Booth. So I think what that does, that is not like an in perpetuity you're going to be able to spend like an SEC school, but it certainly is going to put you at the top of the line of the Big 12 and in least stressed about hitting the rev share number, being able to pay coaches more, perhaps facilities, support staff, stuff like that. That's where the spending for Kansas will be up relative to the rest of their peers now because of this donation. And it's kind of just it's not just symbolic because of all the things that it will tangibly do, but in terms of their Big Ten case, a little bit symbolic. Like, hey, we've got this that we can flex out there if we want to. We can go get one of the biggest gifts in college athletics history because we have those types of resources available to us. So it's a nice little kind of like a flare that you're shooting up in the night to try and get the Big Ten's attention. And, I think Andy is probably right that it may have done that a bit. So, yeah, you throw on top of that, if the football program continues to perform, again, what happens over the next 4 or 5 years? But if the football program continues to perform, that's going to make them even more and more attractive. And Kansas is definitely one thing you can say about them, like Travis Goff, they are going all out. They understand the importance of the moment. They understand the existential threat. And, hey, we got to do everything we can to be a part of the highest level that we can. They're absolutely doing all of that. And so that's really just Andy Staples recognizing that aspect of it. So those were the two directly mentioned in this video. I will mention one more that was directly mentioned and two indirectly mentioned, plus one that I was a little surprised was not mentioned here in just a moment.